Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. My name is Bodie, and I am your host. And on today's episode, we are going to talk once again to Bart Bouchat. Bart was lucky enough to drive the Ford Explorer EV. Now, we mentioned this in the interview, but we don't have the Ford Explorer EV here in the US, despite the fact that the Ford Explorer is a super popular vehicle here in the United States. Now, just in case you are not familiar with this series that we've been doing with Bart since the beginning of the year, Bart lives in Ireland. He's been looking for a new vehicle to replace his Model 3. He has narrowed his search down to the Polestar 3, the Volkswagen ID.7, and the Ford Capri, which the Ford Capri isn't even out yet, but the Ford Explorer EV has a lot of the same features, and they share the same or similar design language. So what Bart decided he was going to do is he's going to go and he's going to test drive the Ford Explorer EV, and he was going to see if he liked it, so that he would know, get a little bit of a glimpse into what the Ford Capri would be like, which would be a smaller vehicle. Bart compares the Explorer EV and the Ford Capri they compare to the Model Y and the Model 3 in the interview. But before we get to that interview, we have some Patreon members to thank, and we're going to start with Rolando, Bruce C., Howard, Isaiah, Bruce W., Steve, Jerbo, Joseph, Friendly Sleet 66, Alki Bob, Alex, Stephen, Christopher. Everyone I just mentioned have been supporting this show from 2021 all the way to 2023. So thank you all very much for your support of this show. And next episode, we'll get everybody who started supporting the show in 2023 to 2024. So if you want to get your name read on the next episode, please go ahead and go to patreon.com/kilowatt or supportkilowatt.com and sign up for as little as $1 and you get no ads. Again, thank you everybody for supporting the show. And now let's welcome Bart to the show.
Hi, Bodie. Seems like only yesterday I was here.
You know what? I'm okay with making this into a monthly thing if you are. It's nice. It's nice to chat. It's nice to not only is it nice to chat, it's nice to chat and see like there's light outside your window, because normally it's midnight your time.
Yeah.
And today it's 6, so you still got some of your evening left on Sunday here.
I do, yes. And it's not quite far enough into autumn. The clocks have changed and robbed us of all of our sunlight. Yes, it's still bright.
Okay, so we are here because, Bart, you decided that you wanted to test drive the Ford Explorer EV, which when Americans hear Ford Explorer, that is a staple here in the United States. But
Is
the
it?
EV version, oh yeah, the Ford Explorers are everywhere here. But the EV version is only in Europe. So you decided to do a test drive, and we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah. So I test drove it because I don't want to buy it.
Oh, okay.
Could sound silly. So let me. So the car I want is also not available to you guys. It is the EV version of the Ford Capri, which was a 1970s icon in Europe. It was basically a family car that was also a sports car. So it was a four-door sports coupe. It had this amazing, really long bonnet. It was this gorgeous, gorgeous car. I always adored them as a kid. And it went away. There just wasn't a Capri anymore after the early 80s. And they've revived the brand as an EV, and they've made it an affordable EV that, in terms of size and shape and everything, it's very much a competitor to the Polestar 2 and the Tesla Model 3. And as soon as I saw the ads for it, I was like, I want this. I want to have a go in this. And the platform is identical to the Ford Explorer, and the two cars are being released within a few months of each other, but the Explorer is going first. So the Explorer arrived in our dealership this week. I told Ford about a month ago, as soon as you get one of these cars into Ireland, I want to drive it. And lo and behold, I got a phone call. Hey, we have one of these cars. Do you want to drive it? And I said, yes, I do. And so the dealer knows why I was driving the Explorer. And I asked the dealer, so how similar is this? And he said, so you know the way the Model 3 and the Model Y are basically when you get into them, you need to take a second look to make sure you're in the right one. So well, that's what the Explorer and the Capri are like. They really are a tall version and a sporty version of the same car.
Okay.
So, okay, this is a good test. And Ford released, so there was a teaser video last time I was talking to you, which was very much like a movie trailer. It was quick cut, quick cut, quick cut, fancy lighting, car racing, going around corner, looking cool, but you couldn't really see the car other than, hey, that's cool. But they released like a 6-minute interview with the designers and they gave you a guided tour of the car and you could actually see the insides and you could actually see the outsides and they explained all of the detailing and where the inspiration came from. And I got into the Explorer and I immediately felt like I was in the video about the Capri because the interior looks identical as best as I can tell. So it was actually a very good comparison, which is great. That was my first bit of deja vu. It's like, wow, this looks just like the video, even though I'm up high and when it's the Capri, I'll be down low. But it's yeah, so it looked like the same car.
How big is it when you compare it maybe to a Model Y? Is it bigger? Is it smaller? Because a Ford Explorer here is not a small car. I do think it's like 5 or 6 seats, depending on the setup.
Well, okay, so this was definitely 5. There was no sign of a 7. I would say this was no bigger than a Model Y, the Explorer.
Okay, yeah, because the one I'm looking at on Ford's website, maximum 7 seats, which is that's a big vehicle.
I would say go to Ford.ie, and the very first thing that will shout in your face, they have it at the very top of their webpage, is the European version of the Explorer. And I'm very curious to see if you recognize it as anything like what you guys have, but I think it won't be.
So yeah, a more futuristic version of what we have here for the United States, and I would also say it has a little bit of that EV or the Hyundai. No, the is it the EV9?
The EV9, yeah, you're right. It's way smaller than an EV9, but you're absolutely right. It's very reminiscent at its front of the EV9. Also, kind of reminds me though of the F-150 Lightning, just the way the
Yeah, I can
headlights
see
are
that.
laid out and stuff, but
Yeah,
smaller, like way smaller than Lightning.
yeah, yeah. It definitely takes some of that design language and moves it over, but it's still its own
Yeah,
thing.
it is its own thing, and the Capri is like if you see the Capri in profile, it's like a Polestar 2 where someone rounded all the corners and made it a bit softer. And so you take the basic body shape of the Polestar 2 and the design language of the Explorer and you mush them together and you get the Capri.
Yeah, I can see that. I think the Capri the and this isn't an insult by any stretch of the
No.
imagination, but the Capri's a little bit of a like mullet. Like in the front, it looks kind of businessy, but as you come around the car, it gets sportier. But if you were looking at it dead on from the headlights back, um, if you're standing directly in
That's
front of
fair.
it, it looks a little businessy. But then as you come around the car, it gets more sporty. Especially, it's kind of got that wide stance or that look of wide stance in the back.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, one of the things they focused on a lot is sort of the shape of the headlights and stuff to match the older design language. So that black bar between the headlights front and back is very in keeping with the old design language of the original Capri. That was a real feature.
Yeah, the original grill for sure.
And also the split headlights. So front and rear, they're split headlights. So
Yeah.
they're two pairs at the front above each other, and at the back it's the same. What I kind of wish they'd carried over from the Capri, which they didn't, is the original Capri had a very distinctive rise in the middle of the bonnet to make room for the great big engine they shoved into it. I kind of wish they'd kept a hint of that in the design language of the EV version. Obviously, it would be pointless. It would just be slightly more room in the front or something. But I don't know. I would kind of like to see that bit of the design language come through. But nonetheless, I like the Polestar 2's look, and this I like more. It's like a refined version of that body shape. So I'm very happy with it. And I'll be honest with you, the Explorer, I I could live with the Explorer. Like if for some reason Ford cancelled the Capri, I wouldn't object to the Explorer. It's actually It's actually a nice car. But I did review it with the intention of not buying it. So the dealer skipped over the stuff that isn't in common. So the dealer focused when giving me a tour of the car on what is the same. And so we didn't spend time in the boot and stuff, or sorry, the trunk, as you guys would say, and stuff, because that's going to be different in the Capri. So I'm coming back when the Capri comes into stock, and they have a date that is November. It was added to their tracking system on Thursday this week,
Okay.
and it now shows us in the factory in Germany. So the Capris are on the production line in Germany, and then he will see them progress from the production line to shipping to Ireland, and then he'll give me a call. So unlike Polestar, these cars are real. They're not vaporware. That Capri is. It may be a body shell with two wheels attached to it at this stage. I don't know, but it's coming. It's really on the way, which is nice.
Yeah, and we should say the Polestar isn't vaporware. It's just the model that they promised you isn't coming to Ireland at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So they have had a model for a couple of years now, and it's not a bad car, but it's front wheel drive and has quite low range compared to the new model, which is rear wheel drive and has 600 plus kilometer range, and is a really nice improvement on what they have. But like you theorized last time, it was because of the steering wheel being on the Irish side. Maybe that's why. But either way, they don't have the car, and they keep on changing the date. First it was March, then it was August. Now they're talking December, maybe Q1 2025. It's like, hang on, So anyway, at least these guys have a date, right?
Yeah,
The dealer
yeah.
was very clear. No, no, no. This is coming in November. No faffing about it. It is in the factory now. It will be here in November. It's like, okay, thank you.
And let's
So,
give a little bit of credit to your dealer for not trying to sell you the Ford Explorer because that's what US dealers do. They're like, "Hey, we got this. You want to come take a look at it?" Totally understand. You don't want to buy this car. I totally understand. Hey, we got one in blue. You like blue, right? We have one in blue. You can own it today. That's how
yeah, but
that happens
Bodhi,
here in the US.
the Capri is more expensive.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. What are the
Not by
prices on
much.
both of those?
So basically, when I spec them up the way I want them, which is sort of jacking it all the way up, I end up at about 60,000 for the Capri and 55,000 for the Explorer. And my budget is 50 to 70. So even the Capri, with literally all the bells and whistles that I could possibly want, panoramic roof, the whole shooting gallery, is still 10th. It's in the middle of my budget between 50 and 70. So 60 is,
Yeah.
sweet spot.
Yeah, and the
And
ID.7 was a little above, right? When you had it
well, the
spec the way you wanted?
ID.7, if I took out the roof and the things I kind of want, I could make it just fit at 69, 90 something. And if I put on the roof and the things I really wanted, it would go to 72. Yeah.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's
So,
talk about the your driving experience in the Explorer.
well, so the first thing is I got in and I immediately went, oh, I recognize this. This is like the video. But also, it's very like the Polestar 2. And I wonder if that's because they're all on Android Auto. I wonder if Android Auto has a particular way it wants the inside of a car to be, because it's a very large portrait center console display, like a big iPad. To be honest, it's like an iPad Pro at this stage that's sitting there in that middle center console. And then you have a clutter-free, nice dashboard with a piece behind the steering wheel for the basics. There's not a lot of information there, but it's, how fast you're going, how fast you're allowed to go, and what the next directions are in your turn by turn, which is sufficient, I think. It may also have media there if you're playing media. I don't know. I didn't play media well in the test drive. But it's the basics, but it's right there in front of you. And then you have buttons on the steering wheel, more than on the Tesla, but not obnoxiously many. And there's one or two buttons together nicely to the right, between the steering wheel and the door. No button bar. Very tasteful, very nicely laid out. Very reminiscent of the Polestar. But I also got massive deja vu because it's exactly like the ID.7. So the ID.7, you have a little dashboard behind the steering wheel and a head-up display. And the Ford, you have the little dashboard behind the steering wheel and a head-up display. And on the ID.7, you had the buttons on the steering wheel. And on the Ford, you had the buttons on the steering wheel. And not just is that the same, but the information in those two places is exactly the same. The button layout is identical, and so are the icons. And I really, for a moment, found myself looking at the center of the steering wheel going, no, blue oval, it says Ford. It's not a circle. What? I felt I felt at home, I guess. I was like, well, I know what this does, right? I know what all the buttons do because I just learned how to do this in the ID.7. So I guess that's nice. And you then told me afterwards on Telegram, well, that's because they're the same platform, Bart. But Ford licensed the platform for Volkswagen. I say, huh? Okay. So that's kind of a nice surprise. So for 10,000 euro less, I'm getting the same brain. And and the head up display is nice. It's the minimal information. The dashboard is nice. And that center console is way better than what's on the more expensive ID.7. It's a much nicer screen, which is interesting. Lots of pockets and little cubby holes everywhere. It's a very practical car. Very practical car. And what I really like is that because there's no transmission or anything running up the bottom of the car, there's a lot of space for that center console. And what Volkswagen did with the space was to have two layers where you could reach under into stuff. Ford's approach is different. So you lift up the armrest and you have a cavernous place where you can put stuff. And then there's two modules in front of that, which is one for coffee cup holders and two diagonally sloped Qi chargers, which is kind of an
nice.
interesting idea because it makes them the same width as the coffee cup holders. And they're you slide the phone in diagonally, which is kind of cool. And what I discovered when the dealer showed me is that those two modules can be removed. So you can have neither one or the other or both of those modules. And when you take those out, you have an unimaginably large amount of space in that center console. You could put 3 big water bottles in there. Or even if you leave in the two modules, you can get a laptop in there. So you could safely stow away a laptop or 2 laptops, frankly, in there, which is kind of cool. And there's also by default a coin tray that sits on top of the very deep hole with lots of space, which again is removable. So it's very, very practical. And the other one I thought was really cool. So the nice big center console screen can be moved so that you can have it at the angle you want. And when you lift it up, there's a little rubber coated place in there to keep like a key fob or something that you might need to get into the garage at work or at home or whatever. And it's rubberized with little hold stuff there, and it's completely hidden once you put the screen back down. So it's like a little place for something. And so it's a very practical car.
Do you manually move the screen? Because it looks like in the videos that there's some mechanism that moves it, or do you manually move it up and down?
There's a little tab at the bottom, and it feels like it's on a monitor arm or something. It moves very, very easily. You just
okay,
just pick it up and move it. And so that's kind of nice in terms of it's just very practical. And then something we noticed on our Telegram chat, there's a giant big Bose speaker in the Capri, and that exact same speaker is also in the Explorer. It runs across the top of the dash, and I'm sure it's fantastic. It's a Bang & Olufsen, very expensive speaker. And in the video, you couldn't really tell how would it be in the way. I mean, one of the people in the chat was very concerned. Not a particularly tall person. I'm not tall either. Would this be in my line of sight? Well, no, because it's really well sculpted to the dashboard. And so actually, I think if you were to project a straight line, I think basically the dashboard has been lowered slightly and the speaker molded to it. So actually, it's completely not an issue, which is great. And I'm sure it's great sound, but I don't know. I'm not the world's best audiophile, but it does look pretty cool actually. So the big B&O speaker, and at least in the Explorer, the panoramic roof is amazing, and I presume it'll be the same roof in the Capri, which looks pretty darn nice. So physically speaking, it was very nice in there, very nice indeed. And in terms of what pieces there were, it's the same as what I had in the ID.7, which I also liked. So that was nice. So then I took it out on the road.
So let's talk about that, because your user interface is going to be similar.
Yeah, I was straight at home. I was absolutely straight at home. Some differences. The color blue played a much bigger role in the icons and stuff but the shape of everything was the same as what I'd seen before. But the color blue was a lot more prominent in the Ford than in the Volkswagen. Blue basically means there is AI in charge, which as a Tesla driver made me feel very at home because I'm used to, if my little side screen is showing things in blue, that means that the AI is doing something. And on the Ford, if something is blue, it means that I think they call it Ford Blue, their AI,
Yeah,
don't
Blue
they?
Cruise.
Blue Cruise, that's the one. Yeah,
Yeah,
so when Blue Cruise is doing its thing, it goes blue,
nice.
which made me feel right at home. Um, so it's yeah. So on the road, I was immediately at home because everything was the same as what I'd gotten used to in the ID.7, and it's fast. It's faster than the ID.7. It is at least as fast as my Model 3, and I got to take actually yeah. So it's a rural dealership, which is the first time I've gone to a rural dealership instead of a Dublin-based dealership, and it was such a different attitude. Like the dealer didn't feel any urge whatsoever to join me for the test drive. It's like, yeah, here's the keys, off you go. Oh, I'll be 20 minutes. Take your time, take as long as you like, which is kind of cool. So we decided to go right up the motorway and then onto some of the back roads and then back to the dealership. It's the better half joined me this time because it's one we're really seriously considering. And before I noticed that I was 10 kilometers an hour over the speed limit and I'd barely touched the accelerator on the motorway. Like, okay. I'm going to need to be very careful in this car. Um, but because they licensed Volkswagen's platform, it's that same bloody turn drive twice to get into EV style drive. So you have D and O as twists on the stalk, and then you have to twist again to go into what they call B, which is we've turned on regen. But it's still not a
Uh,
lot of regen.
what
It's
is
still not a lot.
B B supposed to stand for?
Brake. So you've
That's
drive. I know it's stupid. Like I said, it was stupid in the ID.4. It was still stupid in the ID.7, and it's still stupid in the Ford.
okay.
But that Volkswagen Ease has made its way into Ford.
Okay.
Um, it's not very strong regen, and by default, the car behaves like an automatic transmission ICE vehicle. And my theory is that these legacy car makers like Ford and Volkswagen, they don't see that as a problem. They see that as the only way they're going to transition their existing customers, which is many, many, many of them, to an EV. And so by default, there's a creep mode enabled. Thankfully, you can mostly disable it by going in and putting on the optional hold mode, which means when you come to an absolute stop, the car will stay stopped. But in stop go traffic, it will still do the creep thing, which gives you 1 foot driving at slow speeds. It's just the inverse of the 1 foot driving we're used to, right? Because you're basically going on and off the brake to drive forward and stop driving forward. Um, but the regen is not very strong, and I presume it's that blended braking thing that the Kias and everything else does, where basically the regen is there and it is filling the battery, but it's connected to the brake pedal, not to letting off the accelerator. Uh, so I wish it was. I wish I've driven a lot of cars now. There are only two of them in the entirety of planet Earth that I can find that do the proper Tesla-like thing, and that's the Tesla and the Polestar. No one else does it. Everyone else has gone the sort of the Ford route, Ford uh, Volkswagen route. So yeah, it drove extremely well. And once I have to say, I went a wee bit in the default, and then I found the first exit off the motorway, pulled in, and then popped up the settings menu and started going off, 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 on, right? Just sort of toggling through the various settings to really configure the car realistically for me. And once I had toggled the buttons the way I would like to drive the car, it was actually a very pleasant drive. I will miss Tesla style true 1 foot driving, and I will be giving feedback to Ford saying, "Hey, software update, folks. When we put it to that B mode, will you actually give us full enough regen to come to a full stop, please?" But not yet. Doesn't exist yet. I'll give them feedback though.
Yeah, for sure. How did you like the interface when you were doing that? Because I've only driven a Mach-E once, but I found it very difficult to get around in. I've heard that they've simplified the user interface, and when you go into the settings and you're trying to find specific things, I've heard it's much more simple than it was when I drove the ID4, which was a couple of years ago, admittedly.
I'll put it to you this way: I didn't break out Google.
Okay,
When I tried to do this in the Ioniq 6, I had to go to Google. I couldn't figure out how to make the car do things without going to Google. And in the Ford, I didn't go to Google, and I don't think I said any not Boy Scout safe words.
got it. That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, it took a little while to figure out its logic, but it's very consistent. So once you figure out, oh, okay, this is how they think about things, I actually started to click around very quickly once I grokked the logic, and I just I just kept tapping things, Bodhi, and I did get there. So I guess that means it's intuitive, right? If I could just tap away and get what I wanted.
For sure. For sure. How about the ADAS system?
Very good. And so because I got to go on the motorway, I got to really test it. So I guess my comparison is to a Model 3 Tesla with no optional extras. So out of the box, Tesla give you basic autopilot, which is smart adaptive cruise control and lane assist, or lane keeping, in fact, to be honest. And the Ford gives you that same stuff for €1,200. But any of the numbers I've given you include that optional extra, but it's technically an optional extra. So you could pull the price back by about 10K on the prices I gave you earlier if you take all the optional extras out. So you'd lose the ADAS, you'd lose the motorized tailgate, you'd lose the panoramic roof, you'd lose the heat exchanger, you'd lose the electronic tow hitch that I'll be adding to them. Yeah, the option extras I went for. I didn't choose fancy alloy wheels, and I didn't have to pay extra for my gorgeous blue. They have a really nice blue, by the way, a very electric blue. Seems appropriate. But no, so the automatic cruise control is very good, and like with the Tesla, you get to choose how close to follow. Now, in the Tesla, we have from 2 to 7, whereas this is from 1 to 5, which is technically the same. It's just numbered differently. I think in the Tesla, it's car lengths, whereas it's just stripes in the Volkswagen interface. Sorry, I call
Sure.
it the Volkswagen interface because it's identical to what I've been testing in the Volkswagens, the Ford interface. Um, and so basically you have three modes. You have a speed limiter, smart cruise control, and cruise control with lane assist or lane keeping. Sorry, I keep calling it lane assist, but no, it's lane keeping. It's full auto steer.
Okay.
And so you flick through the modes, and then you get the blue. It goes blue when it's keeping you in lane, and it's really good. Like it's not jerky or anything. Like the motorway we were on was very, very windy because it was going around the Irish hills instead of through them. And so the car had to do a lot of work, and it did it seamlessly, absolutely seamlessly. It was just like Tesla, except it was a button on the steering wheel instead of hitting the stalk.
Nice.
And instead of rolling a wheel, I could go faster and slower with plus minus buttons. Sort of, it's like a D-pad on a gaming controller, right? So yeah, and it was as gentle, and it felt like the car wasn't in any way unsure of itself or jerky or hesitant. It felt competent. Like, yeah, it felt like the car was a competent driver, not a learner driver. That's probably the best way to describe it. Basically, I didn't feel like I was losing anything, which is kind of what I want.
Yeah, that is always the goal. Like you look at some vehicles. Like if I was to go to Rivian from my Model Y, one of the concerns that I would have is the ADAS because I'm not that familiar. I'm going to talk with somebody here soon about their Rivian experience, but one of
I
my
look
concerns
forward
would
to it.
be, yeah, the is autopilot, whatever they call autopilot. How does that compare? Because they're a Tesla owner. Um,
Yeah.
and then there's some other things that go along with that as well. But like I feel confident if I ever went up to a Rivian, I'd be happy with the experience. But there are some things that I really like about my Tesla, which the autopilot, I'll use that almost every morning going into work as long as it's not too busy. And I would
Yeah.
really hate to lose that ability. Like I don't need the full self driving. I find that feature stresses me out more than it helps me. But the autopilot, I really like that. I get in the lane that I'm going to be in, and we just go. And I'm okay with going the speed limit. People in Arizona are not okay with going the speed limit in a lot of
Oh,
cases, but
Bodhi,
I'm okay with that.
I dialed the Tesla to exactly the speed limit, and the amount of, frankly, generally speaking, German saloon cars behind me that get very cranky and past me dangerously at the first opportunity. It's like, well, no, this is, I'm traveling at 120 kilometers an hour here, folks. It's not as if I'm slow. That's just the speed you're allowed to go here. Deal with it. But yeah.
Yeah, the speed limit here is 10 miles over the posted speed limit. That's how that's determined.
Did you know something? I know a lot of people who drive like that. Some of them may be my relatives.
Yeah. And sometimes, I'll find myself, because the Model Y is a little bit of a beast, and it's comfortable to drive. I will find myself going 80, and got to back this down because I shouldn't be doing that fast.
Yeah.
But
easy to do. So easy
for
to
sure.
do. Does reverse sensor count as part of the ADAS? I guess it kind of does, doesn't it?
I mean, I would imagine that it's all in one of those. I would imagine that it's probably not the like Tesla's reverse sensor will auto park it if you have full self driving, which is quite frankly the best thing ever when it does it. It's magical.
Yeah.
So I would include that.
Yeah. So the first place I saw this was in the BYDs, where you had this fake overhead view, and in the BYDs it looked obviously fake because you knew it was being made by the side cameras, and they'd like drawn a picture of the car on top. Whereas with the ID.7, it was spectacularly photorealistic and utterly like made your head explode. It's like, how is this possible? And of course, it's the same platform, so the Ford did exactly the same thing. And the better half was with me this time, and immediately went, "What? How?" He's a drone photographer, so he's always thinking in terms of drones. He's like, how's it doing that? I was like, what's the side cameras? But it must be really distorted. It's like, yes, it's called image processing. It's like, but it's like, I know it's great, isn't it? And it's so it's really, really good, and it shows you exactly where you're going, and it's really easy to reverse in. And maybe the ID.7 does what I'm about to say as well, but I just didn't try it. But I aimed at a parking place, and I knew I was going to miss because I was like, I'm completely wrong to aim at that parking place. But hey, I'm testing this thing. Let's have a go. And so I half backed towards it. It's like, okay, not going to work. I need to go forward and then back again. I put it into drive, and it continued to keep the rear view camera up and continued to show me the projected box behind me so that I could just line myself up while going forwards to be perfect, and then just pop it in reverse and drive straight in.
Nice.
That was such a great experience. The better half is like so impressed. It is the best reversing cameras I have come across in the 15 cars or so I've driven at this age. I think the ID.7 probably does it too because it's the same platform, but I didn't happen to trigger it. But I was really impressed. And I'm trying to find somewhere. I think this also has park assist when I enable all the optional extras, but I can't find the bit of fine print that says it. And the dealer didn't push it. Mind you, the Volkswagen dealer said it's so picky to engage that I never use it. So that's what the Volkswagen dealer said. So it's probably, if it's the same platform, I'm guessing it's the same here.
Sure.
And yeah, as I say, it's so good at the reversing cameras and stuff. I don't think I'm going to care. And I've never been used to it, so I'm not losing anything. I think that's probably the most important thing. Just don't lose anything, and then you won't miss it.
Yeah. What about you have some caveats listed here? You want to talk about those?
Well, yeah. So because I wasn't interested in buying this specific car, we didn't look at certain things, right? We just skipped over the bit of the demo where we would have had a look at the space in the trunk and stuff. And I didn't even sit in the back seat, I'll be honest. I probably should have just to be able to have a nicer conversation with you, but it didn't even occur to me to get in the back and see how spacious it is back there. It looked pretty nice back there, but I can't verify it. Whereas in the ID.7, I can tell you it's really spacious back there. I'm sure it's fine, but I'll get into the back seat when I do the Capri. I also didn't have a look at trunk or frunk or anything because it's going to be completely different in the Capri since it's such a different body shape. So again, I will look at that in the Capri. In hindsight, I should have taken those 30 seconds, Bodhi, so I could tell your audience, but I forgot. And I had the better half with me as well. So I guess we were very selfishly thinking of ourselves on this test drive of our car.
If I remember right, though, there's a height difference between the two of you, right? He's tall.
There is.
Yeah.
He's much taller. Yeah, now in the Explorer, he was very comfortable. But that's why we definitely want to drive the Capri before we commit to buying it, because he's tall, and so if he gets in and he bangs his head off the top of the Capri, well, then it's a rethink.
Sure.
I don't think it'll be a problem, but we are going to verify that, and we're going to verify that there is room enough in the back for anything we might need before we buy the Capri. So those kind of nitpicky things I will look at when they have the actual car I want to buy in a few weeks' time.
Perfect. What about your final thoughts? Your I don't know. Do you know Jerry Springer? Are you familiar with Jerry Springer's final thoughts?
I don't know if I can be as profound, Bodhi, but so
Well, we didn't have quite the dumpster fire for this show that Jerry Springer normally had on to wrap it up with some moral lesson. So
I was going to say, what do I smash? Actually, this is my office. I shouldn't smash anything.
yeah,
Uh, so, just I guess to put it into context, my intention is to get a car with 600 kilometers or more range, with a tow bar, and not losing too much of the luxuries I'm used to at my Tesla, and to have it come in between 50 and 70,000 euro. And if I take the Capri and I put absolutely everything on it I want, I just don't make the 600 kilometers. It comes in at 595 if I add the panoramic roof and the automatic lift gate, which is what you get when you click to the premium instead of the base trim. And I don't care. I'll take the 5 kilometers off and have my shiny roof. If I don't do that, I get 623, which isn't too bad. And the Explorer is 603, with all the bells and whistles attached. So the Explorer is, strangely enough, slightly more range than the Capri. I would have thought, put a smaller, more squat body on it. I thought it might get slightly more range, but it's actually slightly less range. But yeah, whatever. And the Explorer with all the bells and whistles comes in at 55k euro, which is really not bad. And with all the bells and whistles, the Capri comes in at 60k. So unless something really surprising happens in November, I am pretty darn sure Ford is getting my money. The only caveat on that is if Polestar offer me a pre-order with a specific date, they will still get my money because they still have the 1 foot braking. They're still a little bit more Tesla-ish. But unless their pre-order page has an actual date, I don't trust them anymore. So realistically, I don't see that happening between now and November. Nothing in my experience with Polestar tells me they're going to surprise me by having the car early. So I think it's 75% chance that unless something really unexpected happens in November, a shiny blue Capri will be sitting in our driveway by New Year's Day 2025.
nice. I wonder with the Polestar, because I've been doing a lot of stories on the import duties or tariffs that
Mm.
the U.S. has put in Europe. I wonder if that's if they're doing that because they know, the price is going to have to be higher. They've been building this car for X amount of years now. They can build it cheaper. They don't have to charge as much more to cover those import duties, or you wouldn't be charged. It's not the way that
Right.
works
Yeah.
exactly, but you wouldn't be charged. So I wonder if that's part of their thing. Bart, one of the things that not for this go around for your car, because I know it's every
Mhm.
2 years you're going to be on a cycle, right?
Yeah.
So next time around, I'm looking forward to what you think of the Envo L60, which is the Neo, a more affordable. We're talking around
Ooh.
$30,000 Model Y competitor. It's
Yeah,
this
I heard
car's
you
calling
mention
to
that on
me.
the show, the most recent show as we record this. You were in my ears as I was cycling this morning. And I heard you describe that car. That does sound interesting. The other thing the next go around is going to have is Stellantis will have their platform ready
Yeah,
by then. So there are going to be lots of really nice European cars, your Peugeots and your Citroens, on that Stellantis platform. And I'm really looking forward. And the next go round, I've given Stellantis a really good run for their money because they're looking like the styling on those new Peugeots is so it's so good. It really catches the eye. But they're not quite there yet in terms of the range and stuff because they're not on their newest platform yet. But I like what they're doing. So yeah, they're definitely going to get a look in next time around.
Excellent. Excellent. Bart, where can everybody find you? Because I know it's Apple month. It's September and October are
Oh
going to
yeah.
be big months for Let's Talk Apple. So where can people find you if they want to listen to more of what you're up to?
So jumping straight to it, Let's Talk Apple is at lets-talk.ie. And you're right, I am already gathering the show notes and I'm terrified of the job I have to edit all of that news down into a sane show where it's all organized and well thought through and stuff. I really set myself a challenge in September every year. It's fun. And me personally, bartb.ie, I look out for me on photography sites like Glass, where you'll find all of my photography and stuff, which I'm spending a lot of creative energy on photography the last couple of months. Actually, I've really gotten back into it again. So that's definitely something I would encourage people to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and let's mention Let's Talk Photography, where it's less of a gear show and more of a like actually talking about photography, right?
Right. So the tagline I've gone with is the art and craft of photography because it is both creative and it's a skill, right? It's a craft and it's an art. And so some weeks, some months I go a little bit more arty farty and philosophical about composition, and some weeks it's about the practicalities of what it can actually do to get this effect, right? So yeah, art and craft of photography. Let's talk.ie.
Perfect. Bart, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your time with us. Have a really nice rest of your Sunday, and we will
Thank you,
talk to
Bodhi.
you hopefully in November.
Fingers crossed, touch wood, and I very much look forward to it. Have a good one.
All right. Once again, I want to thank Bart for coming on the show and sharing all this. For those of you who don't know, on these particular episodes that I do with Bart, I have to do very little work. As a matter of fact, most of the folks that come on the show, in one form or another, who are a part of the community, I just a little secret. I almost have to do no work whatsoever. They have documents drawn up and they already have their talking points set, and I just need to guide the interview. And even then, I'm not really even guiding. I'm just along for the ride. So, Bart, thank you so much for all the hard work, and to everybody who's done that in the past, thank you for your hard work because it makes my job easier. I will put all of Bart's links in the show notes. Please make sure to go check out Let's Talk Apple if you like Apple computers, Apple products, because Bart does a monthly deep dive with Let's Talk Apple. And then everything else that we talked about, I will put in the show notes. I want to thank everybody for being so kind and listening to the show. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you on Friday. Oh, yeah. If you want to email me, it's Bodie, BODIE at 918digital.com. You can find me on X at 918digital. And then also, you can go to supportkilowatt.com if you want to support the show. All right. Now, I hope everyone has a great day.